Good morning or maybe good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I want to thank you all for joining this webinar. My name is Chris Behrens, and I am with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. I'm the Director of Performance Risk and Investment Analysis here, and have been involved with the access evaluation for a number of years. And we're excited because we've just received federal approval to proceed with the third phase of the National Access Evaluation. We've been at this for over a decade now, and this pooled fund really offers an opportunity for transportation agencies across the country to pool their resources and expertise to advance access evaluation. And for those not familiar, really the simplest definition of what we're talking about here is measuring the ease with which people can reach the destinations they value. This offers us an opportunity to lean into sort of a core question in 2026 for transportation in America. How well are folks able to get to those key destinations, in particular the jobs that they need to by the modes that they choose. And we're excited to walk through and share an overview, first of all, with what we've been doing over the last couple of years with this evaluation, and give a little bit of context on the pooled fund, as well as the history of access evaluation. We're going to share with you all a couple of examples from a couple of DOTs that are using the data, and they're going to share with us how they've been applying it at various levels to advance performance-based decision-making, decision support, benefit cost evaluation, active transportation scenarios, and then we're going to kind of wrap up looking out towards the future and share some of the initial ideas for phase 3. I really want to emphasize that what we're talking about are kind of some of the initial concepts. One of the really exciting aspects as we kick off a new pooled fund is the pooled fund participants really get to set the agenda for the pooled fund based on the needs for their DOTs or MPOs that are participating. And then we'll wrap up today's webinar by just sharing with you all how you can get involved, and then also just respond to questions. We do have an open chat, and so feel free to put in your questions. Right now we have the mics disabled for folks that are that have joined. But if we have enough time, we can switch that over and kind of have a more traditional Teams meeting. But feel free to put in your questions, and our presenters are going to share with you all and respond to the questions that come up. So with that, first we're going to hear from the Accessibility Observatory at the University of Minnesota, and then hear some perspectives from DOTs that are using this information. So again, I want to thank you all, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to kick us off and give us a little history.
Thanks very much, Chris. So my name is Andrew Owen. I've been working on this National Accessibility Evaluation project since about 2014, when I helped to initiate the project. And this is actually a pretty fun opportunity for me to sort of think back at what our motivations are in this project, where we see the value of access, and also to think about how this has changed over the years, and then set up for a preview of how we hope to expand and improve it in the future. As Chris mentioned, the core goal of this project is to measure access nationwide. We started out looking at access to jobs. So the primary data that we produced was for every block in the US, an indication of how many jobs could be reached from that location by different travel modes, different times of day, different travel time thresholds. We started this off with an initial phase covering 2014 to 2019, and then followed it up with phase two covering the next 5 years. Throughout that time period, so for over 10 years now, we've been producing annual block level data sets that go out to all of our partner DOTs and MPOs, as well as a series of reports called Access Across America that provide metro level summaries of access to jobs that allow us to like rank metro areas, compare and contrast. And then I think really importantly, watch as access across America evolves over time in response to changing economic conditions, investments, policies, and things like that. I don't think my uh, control seems to be working. Thank you, Eric. So before we get too much further, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what is access. Um, Chris said it really great at the beginning. We like to think of access as a way to measure, to actually numerically indicate the ease with which a traveler could reach valued destinations. There's some really key parts of this definition that we like to use. Ease, the could is a really important word, and then destinations. These are all concepts that get mixed into access, and I think kind of set it apart from other transportation metrics. So let's talk a little bit about each one of those. First of all, access is about the ease of reaching destination. That means that it reflects the cost of travel. How hard is it to get there? How much time? How expensive? In most of the work that we do, we're describing the cost of travel using travel time. Um, in access as a concept, you could implement cost in a variety of different ways. You can imagine the monetary cost of reaching somewhere. Sometimes it's more abstract cost metrics like how much risk do you take in reaching a destination. Um, the work that we do focuses on access based on how much time does it take you to get somewhere. So recording that cost accurately is a key part of access. Next, access reflects potential travel. What are the full range of options out there that travelers could reach, given where they are, what time it is, and really importantly, where all the destinations are? Um, this really sets access apart from metrics that focus on what did people do in the past. Travel surveys, a lot of um, like crowdsourced origin destination data sets that we're seeing nowadays measure what people did in the past, which is really useful to know, but it's a different thing from knowing what people could do tomorrow. And access is focused on that latter question, what people could do given the existing transportation network and arrangement of origins and destinations. And then the last key part of access is those destinations. Access reflects not just the costs of travel, how long does it take you to get somewhere, but also the benefits. What do you get at the end of a trip? Um, Access acknowledges that every trip has a purpose, a destination, something that motivated you to get up and get moving and travel somewhere else. And we think it's really critical that the metrics that go into transportation evaluation and planning reflect those benefits out there that people are moving around in the world in order to achieve. So access looks at what's the cost of travel, what's the total set of potential travel that's out there, and then what are the potential benefits existing out in the world at the ends of those trips that people might decide to reach. These properties all set access as sort of an extension of mobility. Um, Mobility, I'm going to use that term to describe like how easy is it to move around in the world? How quickly can you move? How fast? What are your speeds? And these are all important things to know if you're evaluating transportation systems. But I think there are some ways in which mobility focused metrics provide an incomplete picture that access adds on to. So mobility focuses on the costs. If you're going really slow, oh no, the cost is high. We need to do something about that. That's good to know. Access says, well, we also need to include the benefits. Maybe you're moving slowly, but you can still reach everything that you need to. That's an important situation to recognize. Mobility asks, can people move quickly? Let's get speeds higher and higher. Access asks, can people reach what they need? Um, you might be able to achieve your daily needs at pretty low speeds depending on where you live. Or you might live in a place where speeds are really important, and without high speed of travel, you wouldn't be able to satisfy your daily needs. Access looks at are people's needs, can people's needs be satisfied rather than can people move around in the world quickly? And then finally, mobility really focuses just on the transportation side of the question, looking at, we could say, on-time performance for transit systems or speeds on freeways. Those are all focused on transportation. But people don't travel in order to spend time traveling. They travel to reach the destination. And so access sort of completes that picture by saying, okay, you're moving around at some speed or with some frequency. Where are you getting to? It brings in those destinations based on an understanding of land use patterns. So in all these different ways, we really feel like access fills in some missing details in our existing range of transportation metrics, which makes it something that we've had a lot of fun working on. We decided to pursue this work as a pooled fund, the National Accessibility Evaluation, for a few reasons. First of all, we think it's really important that this work have an element of standardization in it. It doesn't mean that everybody has to think about access the exact same way. There's still room for local, customized studies. But having a standard method available allows us to compare across places and over time, which is a really valuable thing to do with access. Watch how it evolves, going back to 2015, for example. It also avoids duplicated effort. For someone who wants a set of access data that they can compare across places and time, we don't want to develop 10 of those around the country. We can all pool our resources and come up with one really good one. Second, this pooled fund structure provides a community of practice that lets interested DOTs and other agencies get together to talk about how we're measuring access, to guide the development of the project. We'll talk about some ways that's happened, and then also to share experiences of taking access data and applying it, implementing it in different transportation planning processes. And then finally, we were really excited to see that the agencies we were working directly with would often look at the access data they received as a way that they could support local agencies and organizations. So a DOT receiving the data might turn around and share it with all the MPOs in their state. That's a great way to avoid what sometimes can be really high technical and cost barriers for local use of accessibility data. As I mentioned, we started this project, phase one, going all the way back to 2014. When we initiated the project, we included access to jobs, only jobs, by auto, by transit, and by walking across the United States. Since that inception, we've enhanced the project and expanded it in a couple important ways, guided by those agencies working on the project. So one of the first things was adding bike into the mix. That took a little bit of development to tag parts of the network with different stress levels. We'll hear some more about that from Shirley later on. We also expanded the set of travel thresholds. Our initial data sets included like jobs within 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. We found that was a little bit more coarse than we wanted. And so now all of our data is in 5-minute threshold increments. Then in phase two, one of the challenges of the project that we ran into was that the data it produces are really big. That's a benefit if you've got your pipeline set up to take big data sets, get them into your GIS and database systems. But for someone who needed to really quickly map something, it was a little bit cumbersome. We worked with our partners to develop some express data sets that were a lot easier to download, load into GIS systems, attach them to existing data, and get maps made. And then finally, most recently, we expanded our destination set to look beyond just jobs and include a variety of different destinations. That meant changing some of the metrics we produce. Instead of just counting up jobs, it was more important to talk about the travel time to, for example, like the third grocery store. We'll look at some examples of that. But these are ways that the project has evolved over time in response to the partners that we've been working with. Accessibility, to implement it, we could spend an entire hour talking just about the technical details of this. So I won't go into that, but if you're curious, let us know, get involved with the project. The key things to keep in mind is that we start with an origin, and then we look at all the different destinations out there. For each one, we evaluate the travel time to that destination by different modes, by driving, by biking, by walking in transit, by walking or rolling. Each of those involves some different network parameters, bringing in different data sets, transit schedules, roads and highways, uh, uh, speed measurements, things like that. We think it's really important to include those choices across modes. And then to recognize that different modes have different costs. Safety is really important for bikes, so we bring in that stress-based network like we talked about. We apply this framework across modes, across the whole set of destinations to come up with the data that's delivered to our partners. I talked about those new kinds of destinations that we added. This was something that was a lot of work we're really proud of. And so I wanted to share some of the types of destinations that are included in this project. So our current partners are receiving data on, for a given block, how many primary care clinics or urgent care facilities are reachable within 20 minutes by driving, how many grocery stores can be reached within 30 minutes by transit and walking. Or going back to our very first data set, we're still producing how many total jobs can be reached by all of those different modes. A really wide variety of destination types. And this is something that we're constantly revisiting, trying to find new data to support a variety of ways to describe what can be reached out there. Um, to talk just a little bit of detail about the kind of data for each of these destinations. We refer to this as dual access. It's a little bit of a technical term. It really just means focusing on how many destinations do you hope to be able to reach, and then what's the travel time to get to the first, to the second, to the third. For example, if we're talking about grocery stores, it's easy to understand what's the travel time to the nearest. How long does it take to walk there? In this case, we're looking at a 20-minute walk time to the closest grocery store. Um, we might be interested in having some choice, though, not limiting people to just one grocery store. It'd be good if you could get to three. You've got a couple of different grocery store chains. They all stock different things. So instead of focusing on the travel time to each one and having a variety of different metrics, we say, what's the travel time to the third closest? We know that we can reach the other two within that travel time. So in this case, we've got a 45-minute walk, and within that, we know that we can reach three different grocery stores. This is dual access. We provide the data in this format for all of those destinations listed on the previous slide. Third closest high school. Um, you can imagine all the different combinations for different modes. This has been a really useful way to look at access and provide some interesting analysis opportunities. Mapping this in particular can reveal patterns about, for example, looking just at the closest bike access to the nearest food retailer. We've mapped this throughout Minnesota and then averaged it, aggregated up to counties. You can identify places where food access is surprisingly low compared to surrounding locations. If we want to look at a wider variety of destinations, we can look at access to grocery stores, in this case by biking. As we framed it here, the question is, can residents of this particular block reach at least three grocery stores within 20 minutes by bike? The blue blocks are places where the answer to that question is yes, you've got that level of access. The green is where it's no. So these are just some examples of the kinds of analysis maps and tools that we can make using that dual access provided by the project. All right, so we should shift gears and talk a little bit about what's going on right now and what's coming up in the future. It's back to you, Eric.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So yeah, I'm gonna go back a step and go a little bit deeper into what Andrew was just describing in terms of how this data actually gets produced. I think it's always of interest to people to understand it. So I'm going to walk through each of these pieces: the origins, the networks that we use to route, and the destinations, as Andrews did. So in terms of origins, it's really hard to give a scale in a slide of our origin data, but we're using the census blocks, which are the finest grained geography in the census hierarchy. And it really just means any place where people are living, because of course we really care about the origins where people are starting out their day. So this is a block in Los Angeles. Block is just, bounded by 4 streets, and there would be a bunch of people living there. And just zooming out, you can see immediately that calculating travel times from that place to all reachable destinations in 60 minutes is going to be a lot of different destinations just because of where you're starting. But as you zoom out, you see, okay, there's the block in South Central Los Angeles. And there it is in context of the United States. So that's one block. We do this for every single block in this whole country. That's 8.2 million origins. Okay. So to start out with that diagram of like from origin using these different modes, that's our first kind of dimension of the matrix we're talking about. We do it everywhere. Okay. So when we're routing the networks, what are we using? To give a little bit more detail, we purchase from TomTom, which is one of the big, data providers you can get this from, segment level speeds averaged by time of day, in some cases down to 15-minute increments by day of week and so forth. So they provide a lot of rich detail about how fast you can expect a vehicle to move along a different segment on a different time of day. Okay, so we use that to parameterize those trips. As we're starting at each origin, we're saying you're starting off in your car, you have a car and the ability to drive it. You're going to drive for half an hour, essentially in all directions. That's going to be at expected speeds based on long-term averages. For transit, we take advantage of the wonderful standardization that's been going on for many different purposes, but one of them is it makes getting schedules into a routable form really easy. And there's the tools that Conveil has built and R5 to be able to do that are really valuable for us, and that's what we use to make the transit trips available. For OpenStreetMaps is our source for both biking and pedestrian routing, and we add on some layers to the available OpenStreetMap networks, and Shirley will describe a little bit more about what we do both in the bike and more in the pedestrian realm as well. But our starting place for those networks is the OpenStreetMap networks that's available. So for those origins on the networks, the basic process here is we start at the origin and pick a mode, and for a particular time of day, because of course travel times differ by time of day, we measure how long it takes to get to all these destinations, or another way put, for a given travel time, what can you reach? Okay, and that's encompassing, in this schematic here, leaving this origin in the middle of downtown Minneapolis and traveling for 20 minutes by bicycle. You can see that there's an isochrone area or a given geographic area that you could cover in that time. The question is, what all is inside there? How many jobs? What clinics? What schools? I'm going to focus on what we have been producing the longest, which is that access to job opportunities. And of course, this is something that's really important to departments of transportation because, fundamentally, that's one of the main justifications for investment in transportation is producing economic opportunity. And economic opportunity for firms, but economic opportunity for businesses, for individuals. So what this map is summary of that opportunity. It's telling you from each origin point on here, what is your relative amount of opportunities that you could reach in this case, 30 minutes with a car. This varies by time of day. This varies greatly by mode, as you can imagine, and the amount of travel time that you're willing to spend. So you're thinking back to that cost. You have a cost associated with owning a car and fueling it, to say the least, but you also have that travel time cost, and that's really what we're able to compare equally across these different modes. We do this for everywhere, as I mentioned. So this is a census tract level aggregation of our block level data across the United States from 2024. Just pointing out two gaps here. One is Alaska, not on the map. One is Mississippi, which you can see outlined. Because they don't provide the jobs data that we use and that many people use, called the LEHD loads data, they don't share that data with the census, and therefore they're not included in that national uniform data product. So we don't have essentially the job destinations available for those places, although we do have other types of destinations available. One of the things we do with this national data set, as Andrew mentioned, is something called Access Across America. And for that, we zoom in on the top 50 urban areas by population. We're using the county-based statistical areas. So that's what these fun shapes look like. So I'll just highlight a couple in terms of what that really looks like, just to emphasize what these data are telling us about these different places. So on the left, Columbus, Ohio. On the right, Denver. Again, they're kind of zoomed funny because we're looking at the statistical area, but I think you get the idea. So, in Columbus, you can kind of see these dendritic tails coming out from the core. Of course, the urban core, where the center of development has been happening for, 100, 200 years, is the center of job opportunity. But you can see the influence of the transportation network providing really high access some distance away for people that are living closer to those freeway networks, right? You can really see the influence of how those places have just as much access as places further into the core, thanks to their ability to quickly move on those freeways. In Denver, you have a much bigger area. There's obviously a huge area of people connected through transportation to Denver from Fort Collins in the north down to Colorado Springs. But again, you see this really core opportunity density in the center of town. And, as I was saying, these are the results of many, many decades of evolution of job opportunity, but you can see where the transportation network is really influential in connecting people. Now, with auto in particular, are you seeing this or not? Sorry. Okay. Hey, Chris, can you tell me you're seeing a congestion map?
Yeah, I think it's stuck on the national map.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I was just looking at my little monitor there. It was going on about something you guys weren't watching. So sorry. Okay, hold on. We're gonna have to stop sharing and reshare.
We're on pins and needles for the next slide. You've done some great foreshadowing. Yeah, it does look like Eric froze. Well, while we wait for Eric to jump back on, does anyone have any questions so far? Well, while we wait, maybe I'll just make a. We've got talk about the land use data source.
Yeah, I can grab that question. So first of all, I think there's sort of two parts of that. First is just the geography. Where are the points, the origins and destinations? For that, we use basic census geography going up from census blocks. We use the centroids as our start and end points for calculations, and we aggregate up through the whole census hierarchy. You can get data summarized to tracts, to counties, et cetera. For like, where are the destinations and how many of them are there? The data sources vary considerably depending on the kind of destination we're talking about. For example, if we're talking about total number of jobs, we get that from the census's LEHD data program. That's sort of a complicated data source. Ultimately, it comes from like payroll tax records at state levels that get aggregated up. But that gives us a block level job and worker estimate for the whole US. For other particular destinations, for example, grocery stores, that comes from a national data set of SNAP accepting retailers. Our school data sets comes from the National Center for Education Statistics. So these are collected from a variety of different places. We look for like really robust national scale stable data sources to describe different kinds of destinations. I hope that gets to your question. There's probably a lot more detail to get into.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Eric. And
Yeah.
we just got one other question there that I'll address very quickly about whether this includes metro areas or also rural. Our data sets, the data that we deliver cover every block in the United States, whether it's metro, suburban, rural, anywhere. The Access Across America reports summarize that data up to metropolitan areas, the top 50. So that reporting product is focused on metro areas. The data that we produce is set up to describe any place in the US. And thanks for the questions.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with my flaky internet or software. We're not going to be able to diagnose that right now, but I'm back. So I was talking, and I'm not sure how much got across about looking at these two different urban areas and kind of the shape of accessibility, the influence of both the transportation network and the land use. One thing I wanted to highlight, just especially for the DOT audience, was thinking about how this changes by time of day. So these maps are about 8 a.m. travel, so what we think of as peak morning rush. So they're informed by the speeds that we observe from that big data provider. And so one of the things we do is actually route the same trips from all these origins across times of day, so that if we compare it to, say, 2 a.m., we have kind of an idea of free flow conditions. And assuming that those destinations are the same, what would it look like if you could travel at free flow versus this 8 a.m.? And if we take the difference of those two, we're able to produce some pretty interesting maps about congestion impacts. And so I just want to emphasize these are impacts of reachable destinations at these origins. So this might look a little different than congestion maps that you may have in your mind. What this is showing you is the darker areas are places where people leaving from those areas at 8 a.m. are more constrained based on the congestion they'll face in reaching a destination set. So we see a lot of the pattern on the left of Columbus, where there's something like a donut shape, where people in the sort of urban center of the area aren't limited very much by congestion in terms of their total access landscape. It's certainly not as much as people who are farther out in this kind of ring of congestion. Because if you're starting in the center, you can actually reach most of the things within 30 minutes, whether it's congestion condition or not. Whereas these places in that ring are really being limited by being able to reach that full set of destinations. In Denver is a little bit of a different story because it is more of a total wash of limit. So pretty much everywhere you are being limited somewhat by congestion in terms of the destinations you can reach. But we separate these two things and have to understand that there is, as Andrew was saying in the beginning, this combination of, yes, there's congestion impacts, but also there's very high accessibility by driving. Both can be true. We also have the ability of looking over time, and thanks to the longevity of this project and the consistency of the data in terms of the methods, in terms of the data sources. So these are really helpful for understanding how access has evolved. This is looking at our nationwide scan, but of course within a state, you could do the same thing with urban areas or counties even, looking at how have things changed over time. And here the influence of COVID in that 2020 to 2021 travel year is really strong, which is the disappearance of commuting from the roadways led to a big increase in access. As commuters came back, to some degree, access dropped again, but almost universally, it's actually still easier to reach destinations by car than it was in 2019, if you think of it that way. And obviously it varies by place. You know, Houston may be an exception, but in most places, despite the return of more traffic, it's still not limiting people's accessibility to the same degree. Okay. So obviously there's always a big focus on auto, but I think the strength of the data that we have is also to be able to include these other modes and talk about them in the same units. So I want to say a few words about public transit, and I'll go a little quickly because I got us behind schedule, and I'll turn it over to Shirley. Just a note for measuring transit access, the cost in terms of travel time is more complicated than just how long does it take you to leave your origin and reach your destination. Because in a transit trip, you've got different components. You've got a walk and often a wait at a bus stop or a train station. When the vehicle arrives, you'll be traveling for some amount of time in the vehicle. And then on the other end, there's going to be an additional walk component before you reach your destination. Okay? That's just describing how transit works when you're talking about walk access to transit. There's often also different routes you could take. So some routes might involve a transfer, which would have an additional, potentially variable wait time, may get you there faster, may not. Again, thanks to that R5 routing software, we're able to consider all of these potential options when we're making trips between origins and destinations. And we usually end up with a range of travel times based on exactly when you leave. So if you left your house at 8:01 in the morning and the bus departed at 8:02, you might not have any wait at all. But if you depart at 8:03, you might be waiting 15 minutes. And this sort of like balance between when you leave and when the vehicle arrives is why we use a percent cutoff of that travel time. So we use 15th percentile, which is fast but regularly observed, if you think of it that way. So really, when we're talking about transit access, our travel times are kind of an optimistic view of a transit trip. Okay, and if you look across the country in these urban areas, no one will be surprised to know New York is #1 in terms of average accessibility by transit. But looking at the shape of these maps is really important as well for understanding how those opportunities are distributed. And so thinking about an average, regional average, you can see that's really made up of some very, very intensely high accessibility places, obviously Manhattan and Brooklyn and Queens. But there's many, many places which have pretty low access, not that far away from Manhattan. And the fact of the linear shape of transit access, I think, is really important to understand and visualize when you're thinking about what benefits are going out to the community of this particular mode and how are those benefits distributed. We provide, this is an example of data that would come in the state report or national reports where you can look at, kind of the data that's available, number of jobs, the density, the change over time. And as Andrew mentioned, we do 5-minute travel time increments. So you can see the difference as you accumulate more travel time, you can reach more and more destinations. So I'm going to skip through a couple more examples, just highlighting kind of the top 3. San Francisco has very good average transit accessibility. Same with Chicago. You'll note all 3 of those top 3 have a very something else in common: a lot of water. The geography that constrains development in this case actually is super good for transit accessibility if those 2 get matched. Okay? this is a top 10, and again, this is from our national studies, but I think it's important to remember that this same data is available wherever fixed route transit is schedules are available in the system. We have not yet, and this is something we should talk about with partners in the next phase. We haven't transitioned to including more on-demand transit availability, but that's something that I know is a lot of interest from people. Okay. So last slide I'll show is just this time series as I did with auto. The transit story after COVID has been different. This is not ridership change. This is what is the opportunity available on transit? How has that changed since COVID? So this reflects both changes in service availability, how much transit is out there, and also what the job coordination with transit is. So our jobs in the urban core being replaced by jobs in inaccessible suburban areas, that means that overall access is going to go down as well. So again, reflecting both the transportation and land use components here. All right, so I'm going to turn over to Shirley, and Shirley, you can try to take control and see how that goes.
Okay. All right, thanks, Eric. So wish me luck getting through this part of the presentation smoothly. So hi everyone, I'm Shirley. I'm a researcher with the Accessibility Observatory team. I support different elements of National Accessibility Evaluation Project, including this anti-transport access part, which I'm going to introduce more detail in terms of our approach and analysis, specifically by walking and bicycling. All right, so before we dive into talking back about job access matrix, I will introduce a concept probably familiar for you all. It's called level traffic stress, or LTS. It is this concept pretty well developed and used by both researcher and practitioner to evaluate generally how comfortable and safe people feel when traveling the roadway and crossing intersection while visiting like facilities and traffic conditions. It classifies the road on the scale from LTS1. That means that's least stressful. That means it's most comfortable for everyone, almost everyone to walk on, including kids. To LTS4, that's most stressful. That's only meant for those fearless person to walk or bike on the streets. So this concept matters because we know that not all roads and paths are equally safe and accessible to travel. This concept is originated for a bike to describe like bicyclist level traffic stress, but gradually it's spilled over to measure stress level for pedestrian in recent years as we see more pedestrian infrastructure data become available and accessible. But the purpose of both is really similar, is to measure the level of safety and comfort for a traveler on the road. So I want to talk briefly about how we apply this concept and do the LTS scoring at the street level. So we develop a standardized, we use the data and develop this standardized methods, which is the core of our NAE, the National Accessibility Evaluation Project. We developed the method to code LTS at scale because the scope of our work is really at a national level. So we start with the data. I think Eric touched base a little bit. We use OpenStreetMap for bike and pedestrian network. It gives us really like more detailed road network with also specific attributes like number of lanes, speed limits, and or whether there's a bike lane or any like sidewalk infrastructure, for example. So we take the network and we extract the relevant attribute and run them through the LTS assignment algorithm that we develop. And output a score network. That's how we implement and score every street segments for the entire United States for our National Access Evaluation Project. Really, the beauty of this approach, like I want to emphasize again, is it is consistent and scalable using the same data inputs, allowing comparison across different neighborhoods, MPOs, and states. So using this approach, we can get the resulting like LTS network, bike network, for example, showing here for Chicago areas. Then using this baseline network, we are able to calculate like job access at different LTS level. So the map showing here is just an example of the Chicago metro area, which is biking to job within 30 minutes travel using only the low and medium stress routes. That means it's allowing biking on those LTS 1 through LTS 3 street network. So that method is like, rather than assuming all roads are equally like bikeable, we want to see those LTS4 like high stress routes as like barrier for access here. As through these concepts we learned like most people don't feel comfortable or won't even bike on those routes at all. So this gives us a more like holistic picture of bike accessibility to job within a city. And we apply this method throughout to for analyze different places in our project. So for job access matrix, it can be used for bicycle network performance. And we know job access changes as we account for different network stress level. For example, here the upper graph shows we see more jobs that are reachable if you are willing to bike on both low and if you are willing to bike on both low and medium stress roads versus if you are only willing to bike on low stress roads. So although in other words, like imagine if we can lower the stress level of streets, for example, like by adding a protected bike lanes, we can evaluate how much access increased through those infrastructure improvement, which can be a really useful metric for project prioritization. And the other lower chart here shows the accessibility ratio for low stress, and medium stress bicycle network compared to the maximum open street access. The percentage here can reveal, how well bicycle network perform in terms of access to jobs. So here for Chicago, we see that it shows over 80% of the jobs are reachable via this medium stress network, low and medium stress network, which is relatively high, compared to most other metro area. So like I said, we do this LTS informed bike access evaluation across all places in the United States. Again, like consistent method allow, the consistent comparisons. So just pulling some data out of our access across American report for the metro area. For example, highlighting 2 metro here. The Boston Metro, the ranking, it shows it ranked 10th largest in terms of its total employment, but it only ranked third by access to job on low stress bicycle network. So the map review the cities, really reviews cities compact core and connected infrastructure. Versus Dallas, we see that it ranks like 4th by total employment, but only like 21st by access to jobs through biking. So this really means that despite having more jobs overall within the metro, we see that the sprawling land use and the high stress road network really can possibly limits how many jobs people can actually reach by biking in the city. So through this, we learn it's not just about how many jobs or is this or land use. It's also about the kind of network connectivity, the barrier for access, and also the existing urban form that really matters. So next, we're gonna switch gear to talk a little bit about walking. So for walking, in our prior national access evaluation project, we evaluate walk access as if all streets are equal. That means anyone can walk anywhere within a certain travel time. This is a reasonable starting point and assumption because we see walking as more universal modes and pedestrian infrastructure is more like ubiquitous. Although we see, really, we also see the need there to distinguish different like walking environments, like measure its impact on access. But like walking access is as part of the multimodal performance matrix. What they review is really revealing its proximity access, which is probably highly driven by existing land use or job density compared to other modes. So like pointing to where economic activity really happens. as this image from Boston show, we see the dense urban core are places with high walking access to job. And this pattern is pretty similarly found in other cities as well. But highlighting some finding, I would say, through our Access Across America report, we learned really the primary driver of walking access is like job density or employment density. So this graph shows here is a strong positive correlation between the job density and access to jobs. So this is highlighting the most top populated top 50 metro area that's fit tightly in this relationship. We see as job density increase, the walking job access also increase. I'm just going to highlight a couple cities here. New York is a dramatic outlier. It's notable for its extreme high job density in the urban core, while Los Angeles falls below the line despite its really high density, but it foreshops in terms of walking access compared to other high density urban counterparts, which pretty align with its spoiling effect in their urban form. So in our report, we reviewed that New York cities, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago are the top, 4 cities with the most walkable environment in terms of accessing job opportunities. This covers some baseline of our existing NAE network for walk by access, but looking ahead, we have started a pilot project to apply LTS framework to pedestrian access. Also, thanks to our early partnership with the Cook County DOT in Illinois, also with early support we received from our local Met Council. Just not as all bike routes are equal. We know that not all walking environments are equal. So pedestrian level traffic stress accounts for features that really affect walking experience specifically, such as sidewalk presence, buffer from the traffic or vehicle speed. It's really an emerging concept that's been developed in recent years. So using similar methodology, we categorize the streets across 4 stress level as well. And we are actively working on to integrating this concept into our access calculation. Just for example here, based on the pedestrian LTS categorized street network, we can calculate walking access to the nearest transit stop within 15-minute travel, for example. Comparing between the scenario if we are to avoid those high stress streets and only walk on those low and medium stress streets versus walking on all open streets, that is treating all streets as equally walkable, right? So the map shows here is the Twin City metro area. We can spot some differences geographically here. So the differences can be further applied to analyze, where the access gap exists because of the high stress infrastructure barrier. The goal is also to provide a more big picture, holistic picture of, where people can safely walk to jobs and daily living destination. So this is still work under development, but we would like to bring it into the future NAE scope, really keeping the momentum going for, better evaluating this active transport system from the safety perspective. But we are also happy to share any beta version if anyone here are interested. Feel free to contact us for that. I think this covers all our approach and data on multimodal access. I think next I will hand over to Joe from MnDOT to speak about state DOT's perspective and how they leveraging those data matrix. So yeah, Joe, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shirley. I'm going to take control and should be good to go. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Lehman. I am a senior planner in the Office of Transportation System Management. I work in the same unit as Chris Barron's performance risk investment analysis. And I'm really excited to share what has been a really successful and long partnership with you all today. So MnDOT's involvement in NAE. So MnDOT has been a member of the National Accessibility Evaluation actually since 2014, whenever we did our first Access Across America. Whenever the first Access Across America report was produced. And over those 12 years, we've gotten a lot of just great deliverables and data sets out of it, and great relationships. So it has resulted in some statewide and regional performance measures, which is going to be like kind of the bulk of what I share today. Level of traffic stress data as well for Minnesota roadways, which has been incredibly helpful. And then sharing this data with our local and regional partners has been really appreciated by like our district planners, our MPOs, and our city and counties. Technical support too. I've been able to email Eric and Andrew quite a bit with any kind of data question. Same with Shirley. The whole group's just great with being accessible in that regard. And then we've also partnered on some exciting research projects that we were really happy to have either in process or some results from. So to start with, we use the accessibility observatory data for some statewide performance measures. It's really given us the ability to put performance measures around accessibility into some of our reports shared with decision makers. So things like our legislative transportation system performance report that is read by several key staff members and the legislature in Minnesota in order to get an idea of how the transportation system is performing. We're able to include this data in there on a statewide level and also show year-over-year trends as well. And then we also use, there's a QR code as well to plug our dashboard a little bit. We use our this data on our performance measure dashboard too to have like a public conversation around this kind of data and really tell that accessibility story for our state. One aspect of the Accessibility Observatory's data and reports is that they also provide different descriptions on why some of the data changes happen, like kind of the change that you're seeing year over year in this map was because of some of the results of the COVID pandemic and some slowdown or halting of routes. This is job access in Minnesota by a 30-minute transit ride. And then the rebound is kind of whenever return to office orders were put in place, as well as whenever transit routes bounce back. So really great insights shared with us in those reports. And then we also get regional performance measures from the Accessibility Observatory as a national access evaluation. This includes maps like what you see over there for Rochester Olmsted Council of Governments. So they create maps that with this detail for all of the MPOs in Minnesota. And we also get some data by mode as well that we use in our legislative report tables, once again, to have those conversations and to start conversations around access, especially multimodal access, and provide more data for transit, walking, and biking. And this data really helps us understand like the job differences in different MPOs, the access changes, and also can be normalized to reflect changes that might be due to population density or job density too. And then finally, I wanted to share that the bike level of traffic stress data is a key data set for us at MnDOT. Because it measures safety and comfort of bicyclists, it really helps us understand what maybe the traditional safety data isn't telling us about our roadways. It ranges from LTS1, which Shirley discussed LTS4, and we've kind of like paired that with some of our other ways to classify bicyclists in our state. And it is often requested from our local and our MnDOT district planners because it tells them a lot about existing conditions and is a really good public engagement tool as well. So there's a couple of web maps that feature this data available for our planners. And it's available for the whole state. So urban and rural areas, as well as in shapefile format, so it's easy to share with others. And then it is also used, like this says, like for scoping and routing. But we are really excited to hear about the pedestrian level traffic stress, which will just kind of continue to show our walking and biking network in more detail. Yeah, so those are the slides I had today. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jonah to share from MassDOT.
Awesome, thanks, Joe. I'm going to take control of the slides here. Let's see if I'm able to advance that. It looks like I have control. Okay, request. Maybe is anyone able to help just advance the slides for some reason?
Sure, will do, Jonah.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, yeah, so MassDOT has, to start, I'm Jonah Williams. I'm a transportation program planner in MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. So MassDOT has been a partner with the NAE Pooled Fund Study since 2019. And so we have access to several years of data from this pooled fund study. So in order to make this data more available to stakeholders within MassDOT and partner agencies, we've created an interactive dashboard using this data. So the dashboard allows users to filter data by year, mode of transportation, and travel time thresholds, and to visualize access to jobs throughout the state. And the dashboard we've created uses the data at the census tract level throughout Massachusetts, but like others have mentioned, we have access to the data at all the different census levels. We can go to the next slide. Great, thank you. So here you can see an image of the dashboard at the end of my presentation. I'll put the link in the chat so you all can take a look at it. But yeah, a couple of use cases for this dashboard are comparing access by different modes of transportation, as well as analyzing changes over time, as we have multiple years of data in this dashboard. So the image you see here shows the number of jobs accessible within 30 minutes by transit in 2024. And the filters that you see in the top left, all those can be changed, and the map and the legend will update automatically. So the next slide, if you go to the next slide, here you can see the number of jobs that are accessible within 30 minutes of driving in 2024. So you can compare kind of the patterns of access between different modes of transportation, as well as the number of jobs accessible from a given location by different modes of transportation. We can go to the next slide. So you can also filter the data by MPO region throughout the state. So here, this map is showing the number of jobs accessible within a 45-minute bike ride in the Boston region MPO. You can see a high number of jobs accessible kind of right in the core Boston, within the city of Boston and surrounding areas, and then kind of decreasing as you go further out from those densely populated areas. We can go to the next slide. And then you can also zoom into the map and click on an individual census tract. And yeah, so for example, this is showing the number of jobs that you get to from actually the census tract where I live by biking in 45 minutes. And yeah, so in addition to using this data internally, MassDOT also makes the data available to MPOs throughout the state. So MPOs use this data in documents such as their long-range transportation plans and congestion management processes. So here on this map, you can see an example from the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. This is similar to a map you saw earlier about the impacts of congestion. So this sort of purple color is where there's the greatest loss in access to jobs due to congestion, comparing the AM peak conditions to free flow conditions, around the more populated areas around the major highways where there's the most congestion in this region. So that's an example of how, Central Massachusetts has used this data. And we can go to the next slide. So actually previously to working at MassDOT, I worked for the Merrimack Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization up in the northeast corner of Massachusetts. So there we used the data from the NAE pooled fund study for a couple of different projects, including our long-range transportation plan and our congestion management process. So here you can see some maps for the Merrimack Valley region comparing access by driving on the left, so the number of jobs accessible within a 45-minute drive, versus the map on the right, you see the number of jobs accessible within a 60-minute transit commute. So you get a sense of sort of the competitiveness between the different modes, as well as the pattern of access of, if there are places where there's much less access by transit, something to consider when expanding transit networks in that region. So that's a bit about how MassDOT and our partners use this data. So I'll pass back over to Eric for the next part of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Jonah and Joe, especially for sharing, ways that you all are using the data. I mean, that's ultimately our goal, is to try to provide the data and in the format and the ways that you can use it to make a difference in all of your procedures and measurement. Two more examples I just want to throw at you. I think many people are familiar with Virginia, the Smart Scale process that includes access to destinations as one of the components of project prioritization. That data is not from NAE, but what we are working with Virginia on is looking sort of, again, across time at whether this consistent measurement through the NAE can actually reveal the impact of those projects that were selected through the Smart Scale. So as those projects are chosen, funded, and built, we have consistent access measurements across that time span, and we can help them estimate what are actually the returns on that investment in terms of what opportunities are available to people. And just another one that some of this data is really attractive to researchers, and in Maryland, who has been a partner for a long time as well, they've been working with the center at the University of Maryland to kind of figure out, okay, what are the different ways we can use this access to relate to transportation performance. And so they've done kind of a study internally of, like, in Maryland, like, how should we use this data to actually best measure system performance? And they're taking our raw data and adding onto it, which is great. We'd love to see that, and we'll always try to facilitate that kind of work as well. So try to make sure we get enough time to talk or hear from attendees with questions, anything else that Chris is going to want to add. But I'll just emphasize that we are trying to launch phase 3. So we have some good committed partners already, and we're trying to get as many as we can to get this started this summer. What are we going to do next? Well, we are going to continue with all of the measurements that you saw, first of all, and then what else? So we are going to be bringing in new destination types, because that's always evolving in terms of what's available and what's interesting. One of the things we've heard from our partners over time is interest in combining the opportunity measurement we're doing with what Andrew described as, what people are doing. And that fusion between, we have so much data on where people are going now. How can we use that to understand the subset of potential opportunities they're taking? And does that help us understand the planning and prioritization we should do. So I think that'll be a really rich area to explore with people. Certainly applying in that kind of performance management, but benefit cost analysis as well. And Shirley emphasized the ongoing kind of methodological work around pedestrian level of traffic stress. I think that's going to be an important component of this phase 3 as well. But just to emphasize that when we talk about this pooled fund study, it's really a collaboration among the DOTs with the university researchers together. This map is the phase 2 partners. We'd love to see as much green as we can for phase 3. But we do this together. We collaborate on the methods and the data, what the data delivery is. As Andrew said, we try to adjust that to be responsive to what DOTs can and want to do. The way we do that is through a TAP, a technical advisory panel, which is basically every state DOT membership is represented. We try to meet quarterly. And the other thing we do is we have, kind of dedicated outreach pieces. We're a 3-person team, maybe we'll be a 4-person team at the university, but we always have, one person that can connect with each partner. I just wanted to emphasize in the TAP context, the typical TAP meeting, if you will always be project updates. We'll talk about things we're doing with accessibility, but we always want to have time for and space for members to talk, and share what they're doing and with each other, because one of the key pieces of this pooled fund is you get a chance to connect with other DOTs that are, this is kind of an exploratory area, especially in terms of, the ways that these data can be applied. So hearing like from Jonah and from Joe and from many other partners and what they're doing with the data only makes the projects stronger. So I think it's a real benefit here. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chris to talk about some of the details in terms of where we're at with the administration of this, how you can join, and then hope to hear from some of you about questions.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks again for everybody sharing. I think one of the really exciting parts about this is how DOTs and MPOs are using this data to help in decision support and evaluating kind of key questions. We see folks coming at and using this data from like a lot of different perspectives. We have states that participate in the pooled fund that are looking to answer kind of those fundamental questions about how well can people get to jobs by car, as well as other states using this data to understand how multimodal options can be improved. And one of the things that really excites me is the community of practice that is also building up around this pooled fund. And I think important shout out to my predecessor, Deanna Belden, who is now helping kind of spread the work around. And we feel this pooled fund really does offer a critical foundation for us to get consistent data. One of the things I was tracking the questions coming in and making sure that we were responding. And Andrew, who really led the development of this back in 2014, I've been hearing him be really excited because the DOTs that have now been participating for 2 phases are starting to ask more complex questions, because what's happening is the discussions that are happening in DOTs are sort of building, and folks are sort of asking how can we make more informed decisions with the destination access data, and how can we use it. As Eric noted, we are now just receiving that approval from FHWA to proceed with this 3rd phase. We've got a lot of folks who've signed up already. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are looking to kind of get commitments by May here so that we can start moving into contracting by June. That's not, a deadline that would prevent folks from joining after that, but it really does help us define the scope and really start to set the agenda for participating states. So I think we'll pause for questions, and I think we've sort of captured and responded to all the questions that have come through so far. But yeah, just welcome any additional. Are there opportunities for an in-kind participation? Dan, let's follow up. Let's hear kind of what you're thinking about there. I'll shoot you a note, and we can touch base. Any other questions, points of clarification on what you've heard?
I'm just looking at the question about format of the data. So we actually deliver it in multiple formats, and that is always evolving as well. But basically, it's either sort of a geospatial data set, so kind of that you would put into your GIS system within the state or MPO, whatever it might be. And it will be tabular forms of that data, either raw or summarized to different formats. So like CSV data sets up to Excel tables that have been pre-aggregated to different levels. So you'll have like the county summary data and the in census tract summary data for the state and so on. So we try to make it easy to get it into different systems depending on what you're actually trying to do with the data. So all formats. Is it possible to get individual component or layers such as LOS, pedestrian level traffic stress? Yeah, so surely you could add on to this, but I'll just say what we've been doing with the bike LTS is delivering both the access that results from those networks and the network itself. So the scored LTS bike network is one of the deliverables you get as a partner. So anything you want to add to that, Shirley?
Yeah, so for network specifically, we also deliver that as a shapefile, as a byproduct of the access evaluation. So it's more like, yeah, some state gradually find it more useful if they don't have a LTS method developed within the state or the data is available. So we will deliver that as one of the component through our NAE project.
So Jordan asked a really good question about data from other states. So when we have, so for a member state, when there's multi-state MPOs, which Minnesota has 3 of, I think, or two, at least 2, those data are aggregated and reported together. So you do get kind of the entire MPO data set in what you're getting delivered from the state member data. Yeah.
And maybe I can answer the question related to the LTS network. Is it possible to modify the network to evaluate project impact, such as closing the network gap or adding new role? So I would say theoretically, yes, because we do have the network that's modifiable, and we had the pipeline building to calculate access for those before and after scenario. But I would say it's more or less like outside of the NAE through the data delivery. It's more like a pipeline we can build to do this kind of scenario evaluations. But I would say with the raw network that you get, you will have the ability to modify it and apply analysis if you wish. So yeah, so hope that answer part of your question. And this is something we do, and like some pilot project we do with like local county governments and other agencies. So we could certainly talk more if you're interested to learn more this part of the project. So, thanks.
I think adding on to that last question just a bit, there have been some occasions over the past 10 years where we have done a like project impact scenario analysis for one of the partners in the pooled fund. MnDOT is actually one of them. Um, Typically, creating a scenario and running a dedicated analysis can be a little bit of a labor intensive thing, and so we have handled those as like add-ons to the basic participation. It's possible to use a particip once someone is participating in a pooled fund, it sort of sets up a channel where it's easier to say like, oh, we're going to contribute an extra amount in this year to do this specific analysis. It's something we'd have to scope and understand how complex it is. As an example, in that one that we did for MnDOT, it was an evaluation of a long range plan of building out managed lanes throughout the metropolitan area in the Twin Cities. And so it included several projects. It said like, what if all of these were suddenly here? And then we evaluated the access impact of that full set of managed lane plans.
All right. Well, I also know that we've been recording this session, and so we have available the video, and we will share out the slides since we have the list of attendees as well. So we'll be sure to follow up, and in that follow up, we'll provide again links to the pooled fund site, information about Accessibility Observatory, and the contact info for all the speakers today, so we can direct questions to the right places. What else am I missing, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have always had questions about navigating FHWA's pooled fund process. And so if you have questions about that, we can hopefully be a little bit helpful, because we've just recently been going through that and could offer some advice. And as we noted earlier, feel free to reach out to either folks on the DOT side who are working with this data. We've got a number of state partners in the last couple of phases. We didn't want to overwhelm everybody with too many kind of example case studies, but there's a lot of folks across the country that you could touch base with on how individual DOTs are using the data, or the research team for specific questions about how the data kind of comes in and the evolution and maturity of this evaluation process. I mean, I think that's one thing that as a group that works with a lot of different data sets, one of the things that we have been really encouraged by is this opportunity to create a data set that now is entering its second decade, and working with that, because we're often as transportation planners and professionals getting asked to help people think about the short, medium, and long-term implications of a decision. And I'm encouraged by this data series as an opportunity for us to start to have kind of good, consistent data. So I will, maybe we could leave it there unless there's any closing questions. I want to thank everybody for joining us on a Friday, wherever you're coming from. And I want to thank the team at the Accessibility Observatory and also folks in our group at the Minnesota Department of Transportation and Jonah joining us from Massachusetts DOT. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. And we'll share the this out with all the folks that registered. So if you want to pass it along to anybody. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.